I stumbled upon 3 terrifying true tales that will haunt your dreams forever. I never should have opened that door. The ordinary moments of my life shattered like glass. One moment I was sipping coffee, the warm aroma comforting me, and the next, chills crept down my spine. It all began when I heard whispers. Soft, sneaky whispers lingered just out of reach. I stopped, frozen, heart pounding. The sun was setting, casting a fading orange glow that twisted into eerie shadows, stretching across my living room like ghostly fingers. The air turned cold, violating my space, as if someone was breathing down my neck. The first tale hits hard. A family found an old locket in the attic. Simple enough, right? But that locket carried the weight of their ancestors' secrets. Each night, they'd hear footsteps in the hall. Soft at first, then louder, more insistent. Their children would wake with screams, terrified of a figure standing at the foot of their beds. I clutched my coffee cup tighter, imagining those small, quivering bodies. I couldn't shake the image. Then there was the woman who moved into a new apartment. The landlord assured her it was quiet and peaceful. But the nights were filled with eerie music playing softly, dancing with the shadows. The melody twisted her mind, made her question reality. I could almost hear the haunting tune, echoing in my ears. And lastly, the chilling account of a man who found a diary beneath a loose floorboard. The pages reeked of mildew and age. As he read, his heart raced. The diary's entries began to shift into frantic scrawls, narrating the events leading to someone's dark end. Each entry showed a descent into madness, as if the writer could sense a lurking presence. I pressed my palm against my chest, feeling the heavy thump of fear mixing with curiosity. The room felt too small. My heart pounded, echoing my growing dread. Was something watching me? I could hear a faint rustle. A shiver quivered up my spine. My fingers trembled around the cup. Just then, a loud crash came from the kitchen. I gasped, adrenaline rushing through my veins. A shadow darted past the doorway. I jumped to my feet, pulse racing. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. No answer, just that suffocating silence. My mind raced. Was it just my imagination? Or was that figure really there, lurking in the darkness? The hairs on my neck stood up. I felt them. They were close. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The kitchen loomed ominous. A shroud of darkness eclipsed the fading light. Shadows danced along the walls as I edged closer, compelled yet terrified. Anxiety tightened my chest, but the crash echoed in my mind like a siren, demanding my attention. I stepped inside, the tiled floor cold beneath my bare feet, and squinted through the murky gloom. Plates lay scattered, their porcelain shards glistening like teeth against the starkness. A box of my grandmother's old dishes had toppled, but something about it felt wrong. I kneeled to collect the pieces. The air around me thickened as if stifled by an unseen force, the hair on my arms standing to attention. Suddenly, a chill swept through the room, more frigid than before, wrapping around me like ice. I stood up and turned, scanning the kitchen as if the air itself might bear witness to the horror settling into my bones. Just then, behind me I saw it, a reflection. In the glossy finish of the refrigerator, a figure stood, shrouded and indistinct yet tangible in the glass surface. My heart lurched as I turned to confront whatever it was. But there was nothing, just an empty kitchen engulfed in shadows. I took a trembling step back, as the memory of the tales I had just recounted flooded back. I recalled the way the man had read the diary, slowly slipping into madness. Had I invited something into my life? Had my ordinary world shifted under the weight of its secrets? My breath quickened as I turned back to the fridge. And there it was, again a flicker, a shift. The figure had changed, a face emerging from the depths of the shadows. A twisted smile played across its lips, skin pale and taut. Panic surged as I stumbled back against the counter. "Get out," I whispered, my voice quaking. Yet, the figure only grinned wider, pressing against the glass, as if daring me to approach. The temperature plunged, and I felt tears prick my eyes, battling the overwhelming fear. Then, as my resolve began to crumble, I heard its soft melody, surfing on waves of despair, leaking through the walls. It wove a tapestry of haunting notes, reminiscent of the woman in the apartment, twisting my reality into something grotesque. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it echoed louder, drowning me in its despairing rhythm. A sudden crash on the other side of the wall sent a jolting shock through me. I whipped around towards the living room where the whispers now turned into anguished cries, overlapping and rising in a cacophony of terror. I bolted back, my heart racing, desperate to escape the sound now lighting a fire beneath my skin. As I stumbled through the doorway, time felt disjointed. I caught a glimpse of something crumpled on the floor, or a diary, pages yellowed and edges frayed with age. It lay there, open, beckoning like a siren luring sailors to their doom. A chill gripped my gut. Was it the same diary? With a sudden courage spurred by frantic curiosity, I knelt to read it. The words were jagged, scrawled in frantic strokes, and they screamed stories of despair, just like the figure behind me. This time, there was a mention of a Duran ancient door with a red handle that stood at the edge of a forest, calling to those who dared to listen. The very air around me thickened as I read the last line. The ink still wet, I opened the door. What stepped through will never leave. Just then, the kitchen light flickered, casting chaotic shadows, and a low growl thundered from behind me. I could feel it, the palpable weight of something sinister creeping closer, not just a presence, but a being. I froze, fear coiling tighter than a serpent around my throat as the whispers resumed, now demanding, now triumphant. And then I saw it. The red handle shone dimly, illuminated by the flickering light. A door had appeared, standing where the wall met the hallway, ancient and unyielding, pulsing with an ethereal glow. My heart raced as the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar. Do I turn away? Or do I reach for the handle? In that agonizing moment, I stretched out my hand just as the figure behind me lunged forward, its breath brushing my neck like frost. The door loomed larger than life, pulsating with an energy that defied nature, each heartbeat synchronized with my own. As I reached closer, the whispers transformed. They curled and coiled around me, wrapping my senses in tight knots of dread. They urged me forward, their desperate tones mixing with the growl of the figure behind me, hungry and expectant. My fingers brushed the cold metal of the red handle, and a shudder coursed through me, a warning, a promise of horrors yet unseen. Without thinking, I twisted the handle, heart hammering as anticipation gripped me. The door creaked open, revealing a darkness that felt impossibly deep, swirling and void. As the threshold met the light from the kitchen, it cast an otherworldly glow that shimmered like liquid night. My mind screamed at me to step back, to slam the door closed and retreat to the safety of my own fantasies. But the allure of the unknown tangled around my thoughts like the shadow that now loomed close behind me. "Don't!" a voice echoed, clear yet distant, as if spoken by an echo from a forgotten time. I turned quickly, but the figure was gone, replaced by an unsettling silence that settled in the air. The kitchen dimmed, each flicker of light revealing the haunting imprint of what had just stood there, a maw of anguish where a face should have been. Panic surged again, forcing me to step inside the doorway, curiosity tearing through my fear like a tempest. The air shifted instantly, colder and thicker, wrapping around me like a shroud. I glanced back one last time, catching another fleeting glimpse of a dark silhouette lingering at the edge of the kitchen, urging me forward. Once inside, the atmosphere changed completely. The darkness encased me, swirling in a malevolent embrace, tasting my fear. The ground beneath my feet shifted from a solid floor into an endless mire, squelching with every hesitant step. I didn't just walk. I felt pulled forward, each step dragging me deeper into the suffocating void. The sound of the whispers intensified, melding into a chorus of cries, laughter, and sobs that echoed all around me. Each note was painfully familiar, strumming at the strings of my memories, reminding me of that cursed melody that haunted the very fabric of my existence. A sudden glimmer caught my eye, a flickering candle, barely alive, illuminating a path forged of broken dreams and dark secrets. Shadows danced along the walls, forming grotesque images that swirled and writhed. I felt that they were watching, eyes hidden within the blackness, observing my every move, perhaps waiting for my dread to consume me wholly. Tentatively, I followed the flickering light, my heart thundering in rhythm with the screams echoing in the distance. The further I walked, the more I recognized the figures flitting just beyond the reach of the candle's glow. Women in flowing white dresses, their faces obscured, their mouths twisted in agony or laughter, beckoned me closer as if they held the answers to prophecies lost in time. Suddenly, a scream pierced through the cacophony, a chilling, unmistakable cry that sent shivers cascading down my spine. It was a sound of such raw anguish that it overshadowed all the other cries, clawing at my sanity. My pulse quickened as I became aware of a new presence lurking, prowling just beyond the shadows as I approached a grand, crumbling mirror that stood defiantly amidst the darkness. The surface trembled with an otherworldly energy. Fragments of my own reflection flickered within, but the figures surrounding me grew more vivid, breaking the boundaries of their own despair and reaching toward me. The air crackled with electricity, swirling with shadows that stretched and pulled without warning. The scream returned, now right next to me, breathing down my neck. I turned sharply, heart racing, to find nothing but the oppressive darkness. But when I glanced back toward the mirror, I realized with horror that the twisted faces had turned upon me, their mouths agape as if ready to devour my soul. "You shouldn't be here," they whispered in unison, voices weaving, with malice and pleasure. Their eyes glowed with an insatiable hunger, and I stumbled back, pinned against the mirror. Reality warped around me, the air thickening into a tangible mass of despair. Panicking, I realized that I was trapped, an unwilling participant in a nightmare unspooling before me. And then, without warning, the ground beneath me gave way, the shadows swallowing me whole in a rush of cold despair. As I fell, the last sight I had was of those faces leering, their twisted smiles still aglow, echoing the screams of countless souls that had been imprisoned like me. Darkness enveloped me, and a voice reverberated through the abyss, whispering the final words. "You've opened the door. Now you may never leave." And then, the abyss became an ocean of anguished cries, and I was submerged, lost forever. The cacophony of wailing voices ebbed and flowed like the tide, pulling at my consciousness, rendering me weightless. I floated deeper into the void that threatened to engulf me, my own despair blending with the relentless chorus surrounding me. I could feel the shadows clawing at my limbs, tendrils of darkness wrapping around my wrists and ankles, binding me in an undulating embrace. Panic twisted inside me like a dying ember desperately fighting to stay alive. Suddenly, with a gut-wrenching lurch, my fall stopped. I landed in a damp and musty chamber, the air thick with decay. The ground felt like soft earth but turned rapidly into a viscous sludge beneath my hands as I pushed myself up. I blinked against the shroud of darkness that smothered any residual light, my heart hammering against my ribcage, a frantic, primal beat that urged me to flee. A flicker detached itself from the inky blackness, a single spark illuminating the chamber briefly. It revealed grotesque shapes jutting out from the walls, resembling gnarled hands reaching upward as if pleading for release. The scent of mold and something far worse, something rotting, filled my nostrils. I realized with horror that they were not mere shadows. They were trapped souls, frozen in eternal anguish, their features twisted in expressions of terror and despair. "Don't look away! Help us!" they screamed, voices overlapping into a chilling symphony that clawed at my sanity, urging me closer even as I fought against the overwhelming terror. The reality of their plight gripped my heart. Each tortured face was once whole, vibrant with life, now lost within this prison of darkness. I staggered backward, my skin prickling as I felt the walls tremble around me. The chamber began to shift, the dimensions contorting, echoing the manic gnawing in my chest. Felt sentient, shifting in resonance to my growing dread. The whispers turned into maniacal laughter, mocking my stumbling steps away from the souls imprisoned within these walls. "Join us," they wailed, the cries resonating with a longing desperation. A chilling echo of the very voices I had heard before those lost, floated through the abyss, still yearning for release. I entered a state of disorientation, grappling with the notion that perhaps I was simply another lost soul destined to wander this endless night. But just as I began to convince myself there was no way out, a flicker of hope sparked somewhere in my mind. I remembered the candlelight from earlier, its flicker a promise of guidance. I turned back toward the depths of the chamber, straining to locate a source of light that could lead me back above. I took a step forward and heard a crack beneath my weight. Glancing down, I saw a fault line pooling with darkness beneath my feet, pulsating in time with the haunting laughter. Curiosity drove me again, and alongside the encouragement from the ethereal figures, I pressed onward. I stumbled through the dense shadows, calling out, "Is there anyone there?" His answer came unexpectedly. From the opposing darkened corners emerged a silhouette, hazy yet imposing, cloaked in rippling shadows. A face emerged familiar yet repulsive, via reflection of someone I once knew, twisted by time and suffering. "Why did you seek this place, little wanderer?" The figure crooned, its voice smooth as silk yet laced with malice. "You should not have opened the door. Now your fate is intertwined with theirs. Stay back," I shouted, uncertainty flaring into terror, my breath hitching in my throat. But reality rippled like water as the creature slid toward me, eyes glimmering red as they absorbed the remnants of my resolve. The chamber darkened as figures emerged from the shadows. Those faces once desperate were now twisted into visages of glee. They encircled me, their hands clawing at the air, a living halo of despair. "Join us," they sang, a harmony of madness filling the chamber, the air trembling with an encroaching dread as the dimensions of reality began to warp around me. "You've opened the door, and now it will never close. We will share your despair forever." As their chilling laughter swallowed me whole, the figure lunged, sinewy fingers outstretched. My heart raced, the darkness constricting around me, squeezing out my very breath. In that final moment, as I felt the grip of the abyss wrap around me, I screamed, "I refuse! I refuse!" But their shadows consumed my words, silencing me just as I was about to slip into the warm embrace of oblivion. And then I slammed into a stark, white light, blinding and searing. The shadows quickly receded, and in a moment of clarity, I saw a vast expanse, a void illuminated by the subtle glow of flickering candles, but I wasn't alone. Watching from the edges were figures, those souls whom I had thought lost, now grinning in a cold, eternal welcome. "Welcome back," they whispered, all too familiar, their voices trailing into my soul just as the door started to close behind me, sealing off the darkness in a way I realized I could no longer remember. But one figure slipped through, a silhouette merging with me, its laugh resonating within my skull. In that chilling instant, understanding took hold. I had escaped the door, but the door had not escaped me. And now, I was part of them, part of this cursed existence, framed in shadows, forever beckoning the next unwitting soul. As I stumbled away, laughter echoed in my mind, waiting eagerly for my next move. The flickering candlelight didn't offer warmth. Instead, it illuminated a vicious reality that I had unknowingly invited into my life. I had hoped to find peace in the glow, but the faces surrounding me wore masks of joy too unsettling to be real. Their grins stretched impossibly wide as I turned, feeling the phantom remnants of their agony linger in the corners of my consciousness. "Now you understand," the figure that had merged with me whispered, its voice a cold caress against my mind. "You will never know peace again." Tendrils of darkness danced around it, whispering tales of eternal torment. I felt a pulse in my veins, a dark rhythm that echoed the laughter of the lost souls as they swayed in a twisted dance. "Let's play," a voice cooed, enticing and dreadful. The echoes of their laughter filled the candlelit space, rising and falling like a macabre symphony. All around me, their eyes glimmered with unholy delight, a collective longing for the hunt. My heart lurched with terror, but it felt distant as if someone else were feeling it while I stood apart, observing. "This is no game," I screamed, my voice drowned in the malevolent cacophony. The shadowy figure pulled away slightly, revealing a roiling mass, a barely there visage of lost hope contorted by despair. "This is an eternity of joy. You are ours now." Suddenly, the white light flickered, dimming with each rasping breath I took. Shadows began to scrape against the edges of my vision, their tails whispering to those lurking beyond the light. Memories clawed desperately at the curtain of my mind. Faces I had loved, lives I had lived flashed haphazardly like a flickering film strip, each frame landing with a dull thud of recognition that filled the air with dread. "Find the door!" A soul shrieked from the perimeter, her expression one of panic as she struggled against her invisible chains. The reminder stirred something deep within me, a flickering hope that maybe escape was still possible. Did I dare to summon that ember again? But I was bound to them. My limbs felt heavy as if they were sinking into the guck of unresolved desires. The figures pressed closer, their circling dance more frantic, and my heart thundered in time, urging liberation while my feet remained rooted to the spot. "Even if you run, where will you go?" crooned the voice that entwined with my thoughts like a twisted vine. "You've crossed over. Your fate is ours, forever intertwined. Each step you take will lead you deeper into our embrace." I in a desperate bid to reclaim my autonomy. I took a step back, but it was swallowed by flickering whispers. They echoed with vivid images of those claiming the light, captives of despair that only multiplied with every soul that entered their realm, a hungry maw with no bottom. "Help us." The panicked figure shrieked again, dread wrapping around her voice. "You can still save us." Her eyes pleaded even as they were clouded with the realization of her own fate becoming intertwined with mine. I felt the weight of her desperation plunge cooler needles into my heart. "No," I called out, turning away from them. I couldn't bear to look, the image of her face searing into my mind. I was drowning in shadows, yet still clutching the hope of escape. I stumbled toward the flickering light that promised safety. Though dread twisted my insides, the same warmth that once guided me now felt like hollow mockery. Shadows slithered around my feet, hissing and gnashing, urging me to fall back into their twisted game. "Join us," they sang, the choir echoing in my bones, a siren call threading through the fabric of my being. I could feel the faint caresses of fingers dancing across the back of my neck, enticing me to relinquish my grasp on the hope that hovered just within reach. A sudden pain shot through my chest, and I fell to my knees, gasping as a rush of icy dread poured into my veins. The shadows around me surged, a tide pulling me back toward the depths, taunting my every move. But I fought against their force, my hands pressed against the ground, clawing at the earth as though it could somehow ground me in reality. I envisioned the distant warmth of the light, bright and unwavering. "This isn't over," I shouted, spitting the words into the void, my voice faltering but unyielding. And just as I felt their grip slacken for a single precious moment, I saw Ida glimmer in the darkness, a narrow chink in the fabric of sorrow that stretched like a thread. My resolve surged, momentarily igniting the flames of hope as I lunged towards the opening. But as I reached out, a figure emerged from the shadows, sprinting at breakneck speed, its features still twisted into that all-too-familiar, insatiable grin. "You can't leave. Not without an invitation," it screeched, hands outstretched, reeking of despair. With a violent crash, the chasm between us opened wider, choking the light as I was pulled away from the exit. The air thickened with the screams of those who exchanged their souls, shadows deepening around me. "Join us, forever." And then I felt the final shattering of my spirit as the laughter echoed and swallowed my cries whole. Just as darkness rushed to engulf me, a whisper echoed against the walls, "You will bring the next. You will lead them home," and the shadows welcomed me back, a chaotic embrace whispering ancient incantations, forging my chains anew. My heart pounded with the realization as a rush of cold breath filled my lungs, from behind me. A light flickered back to life, its glow calling to another unwitting soul. My own laughter intertwined with the chorus, now part of the undying symphony of the shadows. My last vestige of humanity faded as I turned toward the light, hunger igniting within, waiting for the next chance to ensnare another unsuspecting wanderer. The light pulsed, beckoning with an invitation drenched in a deceptive warmth, promising refuge even as it suffocated with the weight of the past. My limbs felt lighter, yet my heart thudded heavily in my chest, a steady drum heralding the arrival of another. I could see him now, a young man lured into the candlelit circle, his eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. Help! He stumbled into the room, the flickering light casting long shadows that twisted like serpents across his pale skin. Those once familiar shadows now swarmed around him, tantalizing, crackling with energy as they sensed fresh prey. I could see it all unfolding, a cruel dance in which I had played the role of an unwilling harbinger. "Don't," I whispered, my voice lost in the swell of the shadows that leaned closer, eager to welcome this new soul into their fold. His gaze flickered past me, widening in horror as the twisted grins of the figures surrounding me solidified, drawing him in with ethereal grace. "Come play with us," they chorused, and I recognized the harmony woven from my own anguish, their words like barbed wire that twined around the young man's heart, ensnaring his spirit piece by piece. "Run." I could only reach out through a haze of helpless fury. I was caught in a web of remorse and disbelief as he seized upon my warning, his body spinning towards the door, the very exit I had once clawed toward, the exit that seemed illusory even as it promised escape. But the shadows lunged, a tidal wave of malevolence, slithering and howling in a frenzy, hungry for another sacrifice. The light flickered violently as the boy collided with the barrier, a desperate gasp escaping his lips. "No. Why can't I?" The shadows twisted like serpentine claws, grasping at his limbs, dragging him backwards into their embrace. I couldn't breathe as echoes flooded my mind, memories of countless souls who had come before Hema, never-ending cycle woven into the fabric of darkness. "We are many," the whispered taunts rattled my core, "and you will never be alone again." Overwhelmed, I turned away from the scene of his torment. "Stop!" I screamed, the echo ripping through the remaining strands of my sanity, but my words fell into the abyss of their gleeful laughter. I was a pawn in a game orchestrated by forces beyond comprehension, and the realization thudded against my heart like the toll of a haunted bell. The candlelight flickered again, and the atmosphere thickened with despair. The boy's cries morphed into the very agony I had once endured, blending seamlessly with the cacophony of lost souls I had come to know. I staggered, pressing my back against the cold wall of shadows, attempting to sever my connection to the chaos before me. I was teetering on the brink of becoming one with them, but I couldn't let that happen. "Take it back," I murmured, even as those words coiled around me like chains. The darkness grew aware of my struggle. I felt its eyes upon Memone, unblinking and indifferent to my plight. I had become an unwilling participant in this cruel fantasy, a remnant of what was once mine twisted into a vessel of their malevolence. But I had once been a conqueror, a survivor. Just as I had fought desperately for escape, I would fight for this boy, the new pulse thrumming with eager fear. Yet, my thoughts were clouded, tangled with despair. I felt the shadows tugging at my essence, and each second I hesitated, each second I faltered, sunk me deeper into the darkness. "Get away," I screeched, pushing forward clumsily through a sea of hurt and malevolence, until I felt the crackle of resistance beneath my bushy Finjursa, thin veil between the realms. I surged toward it, driven by helpless determination as visions of the boy's face, now hidden in a sea of shadowed revelers, burned in my mind. At I end that moment of clarity, I took a step toward resolve, torn between the insatiable fear of the void pulling me and my longing to save Himi, very breath becoming fuel for the battle against those who sought to bind us both. If there was a way through that veil, I would find it. But the shadows retaliated, grasping at my throat and crumbling my resolve. I felt my essence thinning, losing its substance, as they sang their anthem of despair. "You can't leave us. You will never escape." A sudden wave of icy fury surged above the cacophony, striking me with renewed violence. The light pulsated once more, desperately urging Meth's single sentinel of rescue. Finally, with a battle cry fueled by desperation, I lunged towards it, eyes flickering between the promise of safety and the escape of the boy's voice still echoing in agony. But as I reached for the threshold, shadows lashed out like claws, dragging me further into a whirlpool of screams. "You cannot turn back. Not now. Not ever." Then darkness descended like a smothering shroud, suffocating me, cutting off my breath. I couldn't tell if I was falling or being devoured, but the boy's last cry of distress, mingled with the laughter of the shadows, echoed in my heart, the flame of hopelessness igniting anew. And just when I thought I would be lost forever, a piercing scream broke through the veil. Just outside my realm of awareness, the boy's agonized wail intensified, crystal clear, cutting through the chaos like a knife. "I don't belong here." Panic and rage set my heart ablaze as realization washed over me. The glimmer of the light behind me faded into nothing, but the boy was fighting. As I writhed in the darkness, I knew I had a choice to make. Would I go down alone, devoured by despair, or could I guide him through, even if it led to our mutual destruction? Time fractured around me as my spirit howled, an indignant roar mingling with the shadows, and then I felt Ida's cold hand around my ankle, pulling me deeper into the abyss, and for the first time, I surrendered to the shadows. But not without a final scream, echoing a promise into the void, "I will not leave without you." The darkness wrapped around me like a suffocating blanket, pulling me into the depths where hope flickered like a dying candle flame. I could barely breathe under the weight of despair, my body feeling heavy and detached, as if the shadows were siphoning away my very essence. I struggled against the abyss, each thought consumed by the cacophony of tortured whispers rising around me, an orchestra of anguish, a symphony of damnation. But I fought on, desperate to forge a connection to the boy in the circle of tormented souls. I felt a flicker of his energy come through, a pulse of resistance that defied the darkness. In that moment, I understood that the shadows thrived on fear, feeding off the despair of those ensnared. If we could stand together against them, maybe, just maybe, we could break their hold. "Fight, please," I shouted, my voice cutting through the dense air like a beacon. "Listen to me." A fleeting silence settled, an unnatural pause that felt like the calm before a storm. I felt the dark figures shifting in irritation, their claw-like tendrils retracting slightly as if they, too, sensed the power of unity flickering on the edge of oblivion. From the depths of the shadows, the boy's voice trembled back to me, barely a whisper. I can't hold on much longer. Do not surrender." I pressed, every word an act of rebellion against the consuming tide of dread. "We must remember who we are. You are not theirs." Then, a violent surge of energy crashed through the room, and the weight of despair wrapped tighter around my limbs. I could see the boy now, a flicker of hope amid a sea of despair, as his figure fought against the shadows snaking around him, pulling him closer to their hungry grasp. I could feel his fear, a palpable thing, threatening to pull me under with it. "Help me," he screamed, his desperation cascading through the void, igniting something within me. The shadows laughed, a low rumble that reverberated across the walls. They sensed the growing bond, a flicker of rebellion they could not extinguish. "Hold on to my voice," I urged, as a sense of urgency propelled me to bridge the gulf. "We are not alone, and we will not be taken." But with every pulse of defiance, the shadows retaliated viciously, their searing energy lashing across my skin like the sting of 1,000 angry bees. For a moment, I faltered, but then I recalled the memories of those who had come before us, faces twisted in torment, their silent screams a resonant warning that haunted me still. I would not be another ghost wandering this hellish landscape. The shadows shrieked around me, pawing at my spirit as if to taste my resolve. I could feel them trying to choke the light from me, extinguishing not only my flame but also the fragile bond one had begun to forge with the boy. "You will become ours, just as they did," they hissed, their voices discordant and cruel. I would not yield. "You cannot take me. I will not allow it." The power of my reckoning cascaded around me like a primal yell against the abyss. I reached into the void and caught the boy's essence, linking our spirits together in an embrace of shared defiance. Together, I screamed, pulling him closer to me, deflecting the sinister energy that sought to sever our bond. We are stronger than this, and for a fleeting heartbeat, I felt an incandescent rush of our combined powers gelled into a radiant shield, a barrier forged from despair, sorrow, and determination. The shadows recoiled for an instant, their laughter split by a soundless scream that reverberated through the fabric of the night. But the moment was fleeting. The shadows retaliated with ravenous fury, their darkness pressing harder against the light we had briefly kindled. I could feel the boy's fear creeping back, his pulse quickening as the darkness closed in around him, a velvet pressure trying to snuff out any spark of hope. "Hold on," I urged, pulling him into the warmth of our shared resistance. "Think of sunlight, of laughter, anything that makes you feel alive." As soon as the words left my lips, a blood-curdling scream ripped through the fabric of the darkness. Another soul, lost, echoing a tragedy countless times before, woven tightly into the very soul of the shadows. The taunts crescendoed, mixing with a newfound dread that crawled beneath my skin. "You can't escape. You belong to us now." Despair clawed at my throat, and I felt my strength waning as shadows surged once more, eager to reclaim their prize. "I won't leave you," I screamed into the tempest of darkness, the boy's essence trembling against mine. "I promise." But then the pushing darkness released an unsettling ripply crack formed in the very ground beneath our feet, breaking the tether we had begun to forge. I felt the pull of the void threatening to consume us both, the screams of lost souls echoing painfully in the background. And in the deafening silence that followed, a solitary figure emerged from the depths of the swirling black mist, a ghastly apparition cloaked in shadows, eyes gleaming like sickly lanterns filled with malice. With an otherworldly hiss, it loomed closer, gnarled fingers reaching for the boy. "Leave now, innocent soul, or become one of us," it hissed, the dark promise layered beneath its words carrying the weight of countless souls ensnared. That I watched, frozen in sudden terror, as shadows writhed around the boy's feet, threatening to pull him into their abyssal embrace. And his eyes, brimming with fear and uncertainty, locked onto mine. "Please," he gasped against the growing tide. But a chilling realization rippled through me just as the shadow's hand made contact. Perhaps it was too late. Maybe there was nothing to be done. The void cackled with delight, and I understood with a shattering clarity that it was not just my heart hanging on the precipice, but our destinies entwined in a horrifying dance of inevitability. I only had one fleeting thought before darkness shattered around us like glass. Together, forever, and then, the world fractured under that piercing scream. The last thing I saw was the boy's terrified face as a vortex of shadows erupted around us, ensnaring us in a turmoil of despair, and all at once, I felt nothing but a deafening silence before the entire realm fell away, leaving only the echo of despair lingering like a ghost in the void. The silence hung thick in the air, a disorienting stillness that pressed against my ears like a heavy weight. It was then that I knew the shadows had consumed us. I found myself enveloped in a frigid darkness where time blurred, the very fabric of reality stretching and twisting into unimaginable shapes. The boy was gone from my grasp, and panic clawed at my chest as I called out for him, my voice swallowed by the oppressive silence that crept along the edges of my consciousness. "Where are you?" My words echoed back at me, swirling around like whispers of the damned. My heart raced, each beat a hammer against the cold void enveloping me. But it wasn't the absence of the boy that chilled my blood. It was the feeling that I was not alone. Eyes seemed to flicker in and out of existence in the darkness, watching, waiting. The shadows whispered the names of those long lost, their voices a melancholic lament that tugged at the remnants of my sanity. Suddenly, I felt a bone-chilling gust sweep through me, stirring the shadows as if they were alive. Desperately, I reached out, searching for something, anything to ground me in this nightmare. My hands brushed against an unseen wall, cold and slick, exuding a heaviness that made me nauseous. I pressed against it, hoping against hope the shadows would relent. and then I heard Ida's soft, keening wail that sliced through the blackness like a blade. It was a sound that burrowed deep into my soul, reverberating with familiarity. The voice trembled with agony, each note a lingering thread of hope snuffed out in despair. Though I strained to locate its source, all I found were the distorted shadows, swirling with frantic fervor, as shapes flickered past, too ghostly to define. "Help!" I cried, knowing full well none would answer. "Please!" The wailing morphed into laughter soft and cruel, a chilling sound filled with malice. My heart leaped into my throat as a dark figure materialized before me, its silhouette grotesque and twisted. In a rush of recognition that filled me with dread, I realized it was not a boy but something far war-shorn abomination clad in anguish. "I have been waiting." It rasped, mouth stretching into a ghastly grin that revealed rows of jagged teeth. "You play the part of the hero well, but heroics do not spare a soul regardless of intention." Before I could react, it lunged at me, a torrent of shadow pouring from its being, wrapping around my limbs like serpents. I gasped as an icy grip seized hold of my throat, squeezing tighter with each breath that erupted from my lungs. "Why struggle?" it whispers, its voice curling around my mind like smoke. "You are destined to become one of us, a vessel for the darkness." I screamed, driven by primal instinct. But my voice was little more than a whisper against the shroud of shadow, a futile war cry lost in the tempest. The creature loomed closer, its breath reeking of decay and despair, nipping at the edges of my vision. Suddenly, from somewhere deep within my own fractured heart, a flicker of light ignited a flutter of reckoning that surged through me like wildfire, igniting memories of warmth, laughter, and the boy's feeble connection that had once anchored me. I remembered our binds, our defiance against the dark, and that spark ignited a fierce cry within me. "Get away from me!" I roared, summoning every ounce of willpower, every thread of defiance that remained. With a shuddering force, I pushed against the shadows that held me captive, reasoning that if the darkness fed on fear, then I would shove it back with the power of my shattered spirit. The laughter morphed back into that wailing scream as a jet of brilliance erupted from my Kormi own light pushed against the encroaching darkness. I felt heat radiate from within, pulsing against the cold grip of despair. The creature writhed, its expression shifting from mockery to genuine horror as I clung desperately to that fragile, flickering flame. "Leave me," I cried, my own voice swallowed by a tidal wave of shadows rippling back in fury as they recoiled from my light. Somehow, against all logic, I could feel the boy's spirit rallying beside mine, merging with the warmth of my determination, fueling the fire igniting even deeper within. But just as the tide began to turn, crackling energies surged about me, overwhelming and desperate, a frenzied push to consume the light that dared to defy it. The shadows thickened, their presence growing heavier as they reached for that fragment of hope, a grasping hand intended to snuff out my flame. A cacophony of voices rose again, morphing into a haunting choir that wrapped around my mind, urging me towards surrender. "Give in. You cannot win." The boy's voice broke through the chaos, fragile yet fervent. "You are not alone. Fight with me." "Together," I screamed, fighting against the suffocating weight while drawing strength from the last remnants of his essence. "We stand against this." But as the light surged around us, a flash of crushing despair surrounded me. The shadows attacked en masse, wrapping around my spirit, pulling me into their depths. Just when I thought we might break free, the easy light flickered, an insidious pull threatening to drag me back into the dark embrace. "Together," I whispered, my energy faltering as I felt myself teetering on the brink. With one last desperate surge, I vowed, "I won't let you go." And then, everything turned to chaos. The shadows screamed, the darkness howled, and the entities around us twisted with rage. I was flung backward, tearing me away from the boy as shrieks grew louder, echoing through the void. And then, my vision blurred, the world fracturing into pieces as I was cast away, lost once more into the depths of the dark abyss, and a piercing darkness surrounded me, rich with a terrible stillness. I blinked, disoriented, as I realized I was no longer alone. The boy stood before me, eyes filled with darkness and terror, the split second before the shadows fully consumed him. "Your choice," he whispered, the last remnants of his essence slipping away, bringing the darkness closer. And in that moment, I froze, caught between the sinister pulse of the void and the glint of light that still flickered in my heart. But as I took a step forward, I felt the floor shift beneath my feet, a compulsion pulling me towards the depths where shadows awaited, their whispers beckoning me to join them. And then I understood I was on the precipice of the abyss, faced with an unspeakable decision. The laughter returned, echoing hollowly, and somewhere in the vastness of the dark, I was left teetering on the brink, unsure if I would save the boy or plunge into the waiting shadows. The darkness wrapped around me like a shroud, obscuring reality and warping my thoughts. The boy's terrified eyes seemed to implore me from the depths of despair, and I felt pulled toward him, as though some invisible thread connected us against the tide of shadow. And yet, as I stood there, frozen in a moment between decision and indecision, the figures in the dark began to coalesce around me, their forms twisted and sickeningly familiar. The laughter erupted again, a bitter symphony of despair. I could feel the very walls around me pulse and shift, as if the void itself was alive, breathing heavily in anticipation. Each giggle carried the weight of memories long buried, echoes of laughter from the past transformed into keening cries for help. A cruel reminder of the pain we had endured. "Choose," a voice murmured from the depths. It was soft, enticing, yet dripped with the venom of unspoken torment. "You can join him, but to do so you must surrender. Give yourself over to us to be another whisper in the dark." "Oh," I shouted, shaking my head furiously. The more I resisted, the more intense their pull became, as if the darkness could sense my fear and compounded it into a desperate hunger. My heart pounded, each thump resonating with the pulse of the shadow, an echoing reminder that time was short and my choices dwindling. The boy stepped closer, his form flickering like a dying flame. "You can save me. Please, I need you to fight." Desperation surged through me as I took a step toward him, the flicker of hope rising once more within my heart. "I won't abandon you," I cried, but shadows twisted around my legs, anchoring me in place with relentless determination. Together his voice trailed off into a whimper of helplessness, and I felt a tear form at the corner of my eye. I could see it now, the dark tendrils had begun to seep into him, dragging him down into nothingness. Panic clawed at my throat, but then something shifted deep within me. Memories began to flood back, laughter shared, secrets whispered under blankets in the dead of night, warm hugs and promises made against the encroaching dark. "I will not let you go," I screamed, feeling the warmth of that bond radiate from my very core. The haunting laughter crescendoed, the shadows fluctuating as if they too struggled against the power of that connection. I summoned every ounce of determination, weaving the threads of our shared memories into a tapestry of defiance. The darkness hissed and writhed, shrinking back against the edges of the brilliance I was conjuring. "You can't take him," I roared, gripping the pulse of light that blossomed within me. But the shadows fought back, smothering my resolve, rustling like a living entity. Whispers clawed at my ears, calling to my deepest fears: the guilt of failure, the dread of loss, and the suffocating claustrophobia of despair. "You will never escape. Join us," they hissed, their insinuations wrapping tighter around my heart. Suddenly, a cacophony erupted, and a flood of faces twisted out from the shadows, brief glimpses of lost souls, mouths open in silent screams. They surrounded me, their despair seeping into my very being, and for a moment, I felt my strength wavering, my vibrant light dimming under the weight of their incessant wails. "Don't listen," the boy urged, his voice now trembling. Realizing I needed to focus, I closed my eyes to dismiss the shadows pressing in. I drew strength from deep within and exhaled slowly, feeling the warmth radiate outward. "I will not forsake you." But just as I began to break free from my own fears, the shadow tendrils struck, silencing my resolve and pulling me down. "You know no escape," they shrieked, the laughter rising to a fever pitch as the faces inched closer. Their mouths curled into sinister smiles. The boy's face flickered. "Listen," he implored, desperation threading through his words. "Bring the light. Fight them! And then, a piercing scream erupted from my lips as the shadows surged forward, intertwining and dragging me towards the abyss. I could feel their icy touch pull at my essence, whispering promises of relief, of solitude. I stood at the edge, not just paralyzed by fear, but ensnared by the overwhelming dread of losing everything I had left. But within the storm of shadows, I felt a phantom Tucha reminder that our light, our bond, was stronger than the darkest void. I focused on the boy, summoning every ounce of warmth and love that still flickered between us. Fight together, I bellowed, a rallying cry rising from the depths of my chest, as the darkness enveloped me, the sobs of lost souls mingling with the laughter of the shadow creatures. I could feel the pull of the void intensifying, but I wouldn't yield. I stretched out my hand, reaching for the bravery that surged within my veins. We will prevail. Together. But just as the shadows began to tremble in the light of our joined spirits, a deafening crack echoed through the void, followed by a heart-stopping silence. Together, the deep voice of the darkness lashed out, filled with rage and disbelief, shredding through the air with palpable fury. Then let us see how strong you truly are. With a sickening jolt, the world spun dizzyingly around me, the flickering light of the boy dimming as he was pulled deeper into the impenetrable darkness. Tendrils wrapped around my throat, a vice-like grip that threatened to snuff out my very existence. And then came the final blow. A surge of malevolent energy flowed through the shadows, tearing our bond apart, a terrible scream ripping free from my lips as I was violently flung backward into the endless maw. The darkness swallowed me whole, and I could hear the boy's last cry piercing through the chaos, a sound so filled with despair that it ignited every fiber of my being. Choose, before it's too late. And as the shadows settled over my consciousness, a sickening sense of dread coiled tightly around my heart. The choice had transformed from a mere decision into a grotesque culmination of my greatest fears, closing in as I spiraled deeper into the abyss, left to grapple with the realization that the darkness was rising to claim all it had lost, including us. I awoke adrift in a suffocating void, not a single sound reverberating through the thick, damp air, only the silence steeped in torment that clung to my skin like a second layer. The last echoes of the boy's desperate wails clawed at my mind, an eternal reminder of the choice I'd failed to make. I floated there, suspended between the light I once knew and the darkness I had unwittingly invited into my very soul. The abyss taunted me with visions of hopelessness, flickering like dying stars, reminding me that I was now a part of its eternal hunger. And then came the whispers again, soft, seductive promises that slithered into my thoughts, igniting memories I wished to forget. They carried the essence of those unshackled souls I had encountered, each one steeped in a pain paralleling my own. I saw them in my mind's eye, their twisted faces grinning in dark delight as the shadows fed upon their despair, yet still longing for someone to join the dance. I shuddered, fighting back, desperately clawing my way to coherent thought. Suddenly, a glimmer of light broke through the haze, more pronounced than before. I thought I had lost all grasp of illumination, but this felt different. It was a beacon of warmth, thriving against the shadows that coiled around like serpents. I surged forward blindly, desperate for whatever glimmer of hope remained. My heart raced as the light pulsated against the suffocating gloom, and for a heartbeat, I believed it just might lead me to freedom. Away from the relentless whispers, I began to see shapes emerging around me, silhouettes of lost souls merging with shadows in playful reverie. Not again, I whispered, trembling as dread uncoiled in my stomach. I refused to be one of them. Yet, deep down, I felt the familiar pull, the insidious invitation that echoed, "Join us. Become one with the darkness." I felt that time and sanity were fast running out. And then I realized, it was not just their voices I heard. I could feel the boy's essentia, flickering ember fighting against the darkness just as fiercely as I was. Even submerged in the colonic grasp of tortured souls, I grasped onto that connection, extending a hand to reach for him. "We can break this." I felt the vigor pulsating through my veins, intertangled with the sorrow threaded through the shadows. But the shadows recoiled as I turned my focus inward, my memory turning visceral. The boy's image flickered painfully as if it were a flame on the verge of extinguishing. "Fight back!" I screamed, propelling myself deeper into the void, my voice echoing wildly against the endless expanse. The laughter surged around me, taunting a bond now diluted by desolation. The darkness pressed closer, their gnarled hands grasping like vines, to snuff out the glow that fought to escape. And then came the shocking realization. A ripple of understanding swept through me. They weren't just shadows. They were memories etched from my own despair, the echoes of my past choices pulling me toward the same fate I had once witnessed. This time, they bore a more terrible truth. You opened the door, and now, you have become the door. A chilling wave surged through me. As if I were being unraveled, apprehensive echoes of the shadowy figures rose, shrieking in unison, a cacophony of desperation. You are one of us now. My heart raced as I began to grasp the horrifying implications. Tremors lunged up my spine as I realized that I wasn't merely a prisoner. I was a conduit, a vessel embodying the horrors of the realm beyond the door. I had become the keeper of its curse. No. I screamed into the nothingness, struggling against the gravitational pull that threatened to intertwine me further with the shadows. But their laughter rose and fell like a tide, relentless, mocking me. Each scream you absorb fuels us. Join us willingly, and you shall thrive. It was then that the distortion solidified into a manifestation, a grotesque figure, twisted yet familiar, surging out of the encroaching darkness like a nightmare birthed from my own mind, moving closer, its smile broadening with every beat of my heart. The entity flickered, reshaping into the visage of the boy, his eyes clouded by pain and laughter dancing in the corners of his mouth. Welcome, my friend. It was then I understood I had not merely lost him. I had become him. The door had not only opened to the shadows. I had become the very essence that would seal others into this fate. In that moment, I was no longer a victim but a willing accomplice born of my own damned choices, presiding over the chaos I had helped stoke. The shadows surged, greedily pulling me deeper into their fold. I could feel the determination of the boy fighting against the frenzy of collective anticipation building all around. Help! I screamed, not just for him, but for every nameless soul caught in this unyielding cycle. And in a burst of desperate defiance, I lunged forward, breaking through the veil of dark whispers. I refused to let you win. I felt the forces of the darkness surge violently, as I swung wide open, ready to tear them apart. The door will close upon hearing the wish of those enslaved. But the shadows surged forward, merciless, full of fury and desire. I felt my essence fray, knowing in that moment it might be too late. Transformations morphed within me, a vicious pull and a riptide of anguish as I wrestled through layers of darkness and once again gripped the light, the flickering brightness pulsating through my veins like a flame ready to be extinguished. Feel the joy of despair. Embrace your fate, they howled, and all at once, the boy's visage was replaced with my own reflection in the swirling darkness. A mirror twisted in agony, still stuck in the decision I had made to pass through that threshold. One moment of clarity surged through me, a revelation amid the storm. I have already paid, and I will not become a monster. In that split second, I felt the power of choice surge forward within me, rippling outwards as I twisted the handle in my mind. The door shut it. Lock it. Together, no matter the cost. I yelled, my essence momentarily overpowering the shadows, threatening to swallow me whole. My words swelled, igniting a fire that sent shockwaves spinning through the darkness. We are more than memories, I screamed, wrestling free from the clutches of despair. We break this cycle, and then, in a final, shocking twist of unwanted fate, the shadows lashed out. A sinister push that sent me tumbling into a forgotten chasm, darkness devouring all I had sacrificed. I felt the shadows of those lost attempting to tether me back down, but I pressed against them, igniting the brief flicker of hope I had found. No! I screamed as I pushed my body against the walls of shadow, springing my mind against the lingering doubt. I want return. I won't let you. The laughter came again, but this time, it fractured as the brilliance burst forth, sending shockwaves through the realm I barely comprehended. Shadows blurred and whirled as a final wave of blinding light enveloped me, gathering strength from every soul that had lingered and fought before the boy, my destiny, and the yearning for escape transforming into a beautiful, fleeting amalgamation. Then everything fell silent, and as I felt the chains of darkness slacken, the last remnants of smoke billowed into ethereal light, I realized the vicious cycle was far from broken. The memories merged with each step I took forward, inklings of humanity awaiting the shadows. As if I were reborn from anguish, I stepped through the veil, breathless with the knowledge I could never truly escape this place. Still, as I stepped onto the familiar ground, the flickering candle wavered. I was greeted by the welcoming figure of a village that had never known the truth of my existence. The door had closed behind me, sealing in the depths of that dreadful fate. Yet, the insidious laughter echoed in my mind, reminding me that the choice had never been extinguished. I glanced back, breath held in suspense as I felt something shift within. A deep gnawing settled in my heart. Perhaps the shadows could follow me once more, born from lingering hope and despair the door eternally waiting for. The next unwitting soul. The whispers simmered with a different allure. The hunt continued. But for now, I had broken free, yet remained tethered to those devouring shadows. I thank you, I murmured into the winds, holding firm against that unsettling truth, for I am the door.